Hi, everybody. I wanted to take a second just to talk you through the idea of mind mapping and what that looks like. What you are going to do is you need to before we start mind mapping, we need to focus ourselves back in on the idea that we're trying to answer. And what I want to remind you is in this assignment, we have the question posted that we are attempting to answer, and that is who best embodies the spirit of perseverance during a global pandemic. Okay, so this is something that you will want to look at and really think about because you are trying to understand and trying to show what the spirit of perseverance is within that particular person and relating it to how they've gone through this past year. And so that is the focus of what we're talking about. So to kind of get us started, I wanted to show you, we talked this week in class about the podcast Memory Palace and specifically episode 44, Distance. And this is where we learn about Samuel Finley Breeze Morris, the guy who created the Morse code, and kind of what was his impetus for wanting to create that. And we did a lot of looking at this overall, and we noticed the connection between the beginning and the end. We noticed how he reused certain ideas, for example, pulse and shudder. These are ideas that are like a telegraph. He uses sounds like a telegraph and knock on the door. You can hear it knock, 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 which is reminiscent of the telegraph. The idea here of how to create illusions of space and distance, lines and dots, and down here, real space and real distance into illusion, and then dots and lines. So he kind of inverts these ideas from the top down here to the bottom. We noticed there's lots of connection between the beginning and the end. And we talked about if space were value, like money, if every letter was $1 spent. We really have so much value placed on the first 35 years of his life, quite a bit of value on the event itself that changed him, and then a tiny bit on what we actually know him for, which is the invention of the Morse code. And so the value is really about who he was before. And that's just an interesting way to set this up. So the focus of the essay that he created is really important to think about how you're going to set up and structure your text. So this was just something to use as an example of how you can structure something that's relatively short to paint a pretty clear picture of a person and what they value and what they find important. So after we've done this, what I wanted to just kind of notice is he's pulling these ideas together. He's got the idea of the Morse code and things like the telegraph. He's got Morris himself and his life. He's got his care for his wife. And he's pulling these separate, completely different ideas together into one very short essay. This took 3 minutes for him to read in the podcast. So it's a really short bit, but he's pulling tons of different things together. So what you are going to be doing is you are going to be basically saying and answering that same question: how does insert person here embody the spirit of perseverance during the global pandemic? So you are going to answer this question about your person. And you are going to have basically 3 different separate ideas that you are going to be pulling together. Your subject, this is the person that you're talking about. And you're going to want to think about how they have gone through COVID and really what COVID is to the world, and specifically to your person. Okay, so you want both the world view and the specific view. And then you've got the idea of resiliency. And we did one TED Talk in class, and then also in the resources, there's a resiliency resources folder in your yellow folder, and that has even more resources. So if you don't have a lot of resources for resiliency, I've compared them. And I just kind of listed the different things that Lucy Horn talked about as she kind of went through what resilient people do. And I just kind of listed those here. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be connecting your subject to these characteristics and then COVID. And you're going to be kind of making a triangle with these things. And so in weaving together your story, you're going to weave these different ideas together. So a mind map is basically something where you can put your person's name in the middle, you can put COVID in the middle, you can put resiliency in the middle, you can branch it off. You could, make a list and kind of make a chart of maybe the three things about resiliency. And so you could kind of use these as kind of your foundations that stuff happens, to people. And then maybe you talk about COVID being the stuff that happens, or maybe their specific situation that you're focusing on being the thing that happens. And then noting how they dealt with that and how they focus that. So you can make it a chart. So you can do lots of different things. You can have, for this particular thing, you can create a web. Okay. And this is where you kind of connect pieces together in that fashion. You can create a chart. Okay. And this is where you organize things, down columns and across columns to keep yourself organized. You could create an outline, which is a little bit more traditional of how you want to structure it, and that's fine. You have your introduction and then your insides, and you kind of label it and structure it that way. You can list things and just list the topics you want to talk about and then start connecting them. There is really no way to do this wrong. Like, you can't do it wrong. The only thing that will be wrong, okay, so you want to, these are the things I'm going to be looking for. Lots of detail. Okay, lots of detail. I want quotes. I want connective lines, connections somehow. And this could be in the form of lines. It could be, color. It could be shape, right? All of these are different ways that you could see how I connected with color and shape here. So you could use color, shape that way. And I want it to be messy. Thinking is messy, and you're not going to have it perfect. And if you make a mistake, you're going to have scribbles. You're going to have things that don't look exactly right. I don't want you to redo the whole thing so it looks like a pretty picture. I want you to be clear, but I want you to also make sure that you have lots of information on here. And if you change your mind, cross it off if you don't leave yourself room. Spell things wrong. That is not my concern. My concern is that you have your thinking on the page so that you can lay it out and have some ideas about where to go. So this is what we're going to be working on in class for the first half of class, at least on Thursday and Friday. And then when that is done, your rough draft will be due on Sunday before you go to bed, so 11:59 p.m. So those are the expectations. On Monday in class, we're going to begin our editing and reviewing process before I grade it. And so you need a completed piece of writing before you come to class on Monday, because if you don't have that done, you will not be able to participate in our class activity on Monday. So let me know if you have any questions.